as well as the difference between a resume and a CV briefly. And then I'll talk about how making a really effective resume, a really effective cover letter that will help you get an interview, as well as how to even follow up on your job applications, because I think often people just kind of send it out into the ether and don't follow up. So I'll give you some helpful tips on that. And then I'd like to just, note here that the focus of this presentation is really jobs in industry, academic positions. The materials often look different. So please do keep in mind that these are really for industry positions. Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll now to kind of get this a little more interactive. So I'd like to know where all of you are in your job search. So please take a moment. This is totally anonymous, so don't worry. I don't really care where you are. I'm just trying to get a sense of the audience here and where you are in your search. Okay, results are coming in. All right. So I have a couple more polls. I see that results are still coming in, but I'm going to end this and I want to share the results. So it sounds like most of you have just started, this is a great opportunity to kind of assess before you really begin. And a couple of you have applied to some positions. Some of you have applied to many positions. I understand, I've definitely been there and I've attended this workshop and you're ready to get started. Great. So I think I'm hoping to cover, kind of wherever you are in your job search. I hope that this presentation will assist you in, making sure that your materials are looking really strong, because that's how you get that job interview. Okay, so I also want to know, did you graduate? And if you did, will you, or did you already graduate? Just wondering kind of where we are again. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to share the results now. So we're looking like mostly 2020 grads or maybe continuing students. Okay, excellent. And last one here. What program are you in? Are you a master's or are you a PhD? Excellent. Okay, so it looks like we're mostly masters here, but quite a few PhDs as well. Excellent. So we have a good kind of mix. Thank you for sharing that information. Oh, did I share that with you? There it is now. Okay, so mostly masters. All right, excellent. So let's move on. So I really think that, obviously ASAP, that's the most important part, right? Here, if you can see my cursor, I'm circling around it. As soon as possible. I think that particularly for your master's students who your programs are often shorter, kind of coming in and out very quickly of GSAS, thinking about career development in your job search really starts almost from day one, because you're networking, you're assessing your skills and your interests. And so that is all part of the job search. It's not even, I guess, kind of the end of your job search journey is really starting to apply for positions. And that's why we've put this last in our workshop, because we kind of wanted to prepare you in the process of going through the job search. And now we're finally here. We're at the part that you're going to prepare your application materials. So, you're really reflecting on your skills, as I said, your expertise. Start to research jobs and companies, and maybe start even making a list of those companies so that you can think about who should I informational interview with? Who can I have a coffee chat with? So that if a job does show up at that company, maybe there's an individual there who can tell you a little bit more about the position, or maybe even help you review your application materials, or maybe even, fingers crossed, pass it along to perhaps their HR manager. If you are graduating soon, I'd say a continuation of this, like create a list of your companies that interest you, try to find connections who are there. And so, hopefully at this point, if you're graduating soon, if you haven't done this exploration process, it's still part, you're getting closer to graduation. You want to maybe really ramp up your informational interviewing at this point. And then you can actually start applying for positions too. Even if, of course, I want you first to assess your goals. You need some time after you graduate before, you take a position. If you need time, maybe you want to not apply for jobs right away. But if your goal is to find employment right after graduation, you should start applying before you graduate. And you can often put your availability right in your cover letter. And I'll talk about that when we go through cover letters, and I'll give you some examples. But you can even start applying perhaps even earlier than you think you might need to. And then graduates, apply. COVID-19 has really slowed and lengthened the hiring process here. Maybe it takes probably most students after they've graduated, perhaps 1 to 4 to 5 months to find a position. Be prepared that it's going to take that long or longer during this point. Also, it's so important to be flexible and opportunistic during this point. When I say flexible, that's having many plans. That's maybe goal number 1, get a job in New York City. Maybe plan B is find an part-time position in New York City or an internship in New York City. Maybe plan C is I find an internship or a part-time position in my so I think that you need to consider many plans during this time. And, I think that career is long and meandering, and you often, that first or second job maybe even isn't going to be that dream job. So maybe you have to take a position that's going to be a stepping stone to get you farther along in your career later on. So opportunistic, kind of taking maybe what's coming to you, towards you, accepting positions that, of course, you don't want to just take anything if you do not feel safe in a certain environment or feel like it is really of no interest to you. Maybe don't take that position. But if there is something there that you think you could gain something of value, or if you just need to start paying your bills, take a position, maybe, and also opportunistic. Maybe you take a couple of different part-time positions during this time to kind of make sure you're meeting your financial needs. So I think, you really have to consider what's your top priority at this moment. But if you're graduating, please do continue to apply. I've talked to many students who say, should I just wait until this is over? You don't know how long this will take, what's happening with the economy. There's a lot of uncertainty here. And I know that's very unsettling, but I think you should definitely still be continuing to apply, because every industry is different. Technology is still hiring. Healthcare is still hiring. There are many industries that are still hiring. So, maybe check out some adjacent industries, maybe not only the industry of interest for you, but adjacent. Where to start your job search. This is an important part. So there are often industry-specific boards. Most industries have a specific job board. So we're looking at like the Chronicle for Higher Education here, Nonprofit Career Network, American Alliance of Museums, Science Careers, Nature Careers, and Rachel's going to drop into the chat box right now a listing of these websites. So if these are areas of interest for you, you can start checking these sites for jobs. And so these are much more specific, much more targeted. However, I do really think that you should also be considering job aggregating websites. And these are websites that call or bring together jobs from many different locations. So maybe from like Nonprofit Career Network, as well as maybe American Alliance of Museums, and brings them together in this one kind of one-stop shop, so they say. Keywords from your industry or field to search these websites. So big ones are Indeed, Idealist, LinkedIn Jobs, Freelancers Union. And again, Rachel will drop these into the chat box so you can check them. These are really helpful. It's, again, not as specific, so you're going to have to use keywords. You'll probably become more familiar with positions you're interested in. And next, think about companies' websites as well. Do your own research. What companies are you interested in? Often larger organizations in particular and companies have their own career section of a website page. If you click on the career, and checking back often. Sometimes companies don't actually post. Make sure that you're checking those as well. So job searching, you really need to take many different approaches. And we've talked about networking before. That is really important. Of course, informational interviewing is really crucial to building your professional connections. But, I also want to make sure that you're not only in networking and doing in person, but don't forget about looking online goals for yourself. Every week, I'm going to spend sites. Or if you have more time, give yourself more time. I'm going to spend 2 hours every week checking these job websites. You should really, if not daily, if you're in the throes of your job search. Okay, so let's talk now about perfecting your resume. So I just wanted to start with this quick little quote because I do think that it is, this is from who's an HR manager, and she says, your resume and cover letter are your marketing materials. They will get you through the door and help you land your dream job. Hiring managers or recruiters will only skim over your resume and cover letter for a few seconds. So it's extremely important to take this time and perfect these documents. So this is coming straight from, HR. So that's really the point of a resume and a cover letter, to introduce you and your skills, and you want to make it short and concise because they're not spending much time looking at it. All right, so resume versus CV, okay? So the resume, it's a concise 1 or 2 pages maximum, okay? This isn't a CV, which, here, I should just bring it up probably, which is a much longer document. It is a summary of skills and experiences, and it's best for applying to most industry positions, which we're focusing on today during our presentation. For a CV, it's a comprehensive description of your academic and professional credentials. It can be used to apply for most academic or research positions, and it's a more extensive listing of work experiences, your publications, your teaching. Now, that doesn't mean that publications can't be on a resume, but the CV will include all of these: experience, publication, teaching, whereas resume will really only maybe cover 1 or 2 areas. And it can be multiple pages, so 2, 3, 4, 5. I know some CVs get very long. So those are the main differences. Okay, so let's just start with the basics here, okay? What should a resume include? Obviously, your contact information, okay? Your name, your street address, your email address, your phone number, link to a personal website or a LinkedIn page. You don't want to include a full address on your resume. Let's say you don't want to include your street and your apartment number. You could just put a zip code if you wanted to, and then that way it just shows where you are located. But I suggest putting your full address because it shows location, and that can be really important to an employer, particularly if you are applying to maybe a position, to show that you're based in New York, because most New York employers want you already here maybe. Okay, education, undergraduate degrees and above. So don't list high school. I often do receive resumes that include high school. At this point, employers don't really care about high school. They want to just know where your undergraduate and where your graduate degrees are from. List the dates and the location of the institution. Sometimes it's very clear where the location, it's like Columbia, New York in the city of New York. I mean, Columbia University in the city of New York. Still include it in the comment. We'll see examples again of this later. Okay, so next section, after your contact information and your education, often comes your experience. So that can include paid and unpaid work, internships, and volunteer experiences relevant to the job. So you include the organization name, the location, the dates of the employment, and your title. Again, we will see examples of this, so you'll see it clearly. And then a brief description of your accomplishments. I say in bullet points, but I have seen short like sentences kind of strung together as well in paragraph format, which I think is fine as well. And you start each of these, though, even if it is a phrase and not a bullet point, with an action verb. And you want to, both education and experience should be in reverse chronological order, meaning that the most recent experiences are listed first, followed by later experiences. I understand that something might seem more important to you, so you want to bring it up to the top, even if it isn't the most recent experience. I would suggest not doing that because employers are expecting things to be in reverse chronological order. So make sure you are putting it in that format. Okay, so let's talk about making resume statements with impact. And I know if you joined me for our second presentation, I know a lot of this might be review. I will get to cover letter information in a moment, but for those who hadn't joined during the second presentation, I wanted to go over this again. So Creating resume statements with impact mean that you're crafting a sentence that's very clear about what skills you have developed at a specific position. So with the STAR method, try to be as specific as possible and discuss your explicit role on projects. So STAR, situation. What was the situation or conflict or problem you were facing at a position? Task. What tasks did you identify in response to the situation? So these are prompts to help you think about and to create these bullet points. Action. What action did you take? What did you do to solve this problem? And then that's when you start with that action verb. And then result. What was the result or the outcome of your action? How did it benefit you or the company and the organization? And can this result be quantified? Okay, so we want to talk about, I want to give you a specific example here of a generic description. So that just says Public Health Society Events Coordinator, responsible for organizing events and panels, and that's it. To me, that's not very clear what they did, what skills they used, what kinds of events, what kinds of panels. You don't really get to showcase these skills. A more specific description is saying plan and coordinate panels on public health for audiences of 25 to 50 undergraduates on a bi-monthly basis. So right away, I know what types of, like, who is it for, how many people, how regularly is this person doing it? So bi-monthly basis, they're doing it quite often. That means that they're using these skills regularly and have an understanding of how to plan many events in succession. Identify and contact health professionals in the community to participate in panels. So that means that they have good communication skills. They are able to act as a liaison. Create marketing materials and publicize events through social media. Wow, this person also did marketing materials and publicizing, so they know how to use social media, they know how to publicize. I had no idea. If I just read that line there, I totally miss that they also have an understanding of marketing materials and social media, right? So this is really important to be very specific. Okay, so what else could it include? So as I said, volunteer and leadership. I suggest putting all your unpaid work and perhaps under the heading either volunteer or leadership experience, and list any involvement that you had, because every office wants a leader. They want someone who can take initiative. So for those of you who maybe don't have many professional work experiences, volunteering or leadership roles, such as being head of a student group or perhaps participating in a community, maybe you're part of a food bank, handing out food to individuals in a community, that is all excellent experience that you should put on a resume. It also gives more dimension to your resume. Hiring managers or companies are hiring more than just a piece of paper. They want to know who's going to be coming into their office every day. What are their passions? What are their drives? What are their interests? And so leadership and volunteer really fills out a resume. Also, of course, you want to talk about your skills, your computer skills, your technical skills, your lab skills, maybe any research skills, right? All of this should be there, as well as languages. And so do include proficiency levels on your languages. I think that that's really helpful. And I would suggest, if you're really, let's say you took Spanish in high school and you haven't used it since, maybe you just don't even put it on your resume. Okay, optional sections. So this is your profile or summary, and I'll go over that in more depth, but it's really a summarization of your qualifications. And I think it's most appropriate if maybe you're making a transition to a different industry, or you want to show how your skills are transferable, or you just really want to match it to the job description. And I'll go over that in more detail in a moment. Honors. So you should also list your honors or your scholarships, or maybe what you've received. And so any other prestigious awards you've received. This could also go up underneath the education section, or you could have a separate section just for honors. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. I like to see it up underneath education if it is directly related to education, because that way it kind of wows the employer with all of your information about your time at Columbia or your undergraduate degree in one place. And it kind of, it makes sense in terms of keeping things in appropriate, like in order that way. And then publications, you can definitely include those, as well as maybe any credentials that you have. So the summary, as I discussed. So particularly if you have like an eclectic background, maybe several years of experience, or you're in the process of changing careers, a summary is helpful for this. So as I said, it's really a brief snapshot that highlights your skills, your experience, your accomplishments, your knowledge, or your education. And you'll see, again, towards the end of this, I'm going to give you a couple more examples of resumes, and one will include a summary. It can connect your background with maybe a position or the field you're applying to. That's really helpful. And honestly, writing a resume summary is often helpful for even orienting students, so when you're introducing yourself, maybe in an interview, you know exactly how your skills relate to the position because you've written it down. You've kind of molded over already. You've considered it. It should be very short, approximately 2 to 5 phrases, written in paragraph form, or it could be bulleted. And maybe possible headers for that section, and probably go at the top of your resume, could be called summary of qualifications or career profile, career highlights, professional summary, or just summary or profile. So, got some options to choose from here. And I'd say this is not necessary if you're a current student or a recent grad or with a background that directly connects with your target industry. If you are someone who is getting, maybe a PhD in English and you're applying for a communications position, and all of your background is maybe in writing and editing, I don't think you need a summary because it's pretty clear that you're a good fit for the role already. Summary is helpful if maybe, as I said, kind of changing gears. Okay, so what should a resume not include? And I'm going to do a poll in a minute, but first I want to go through the main thing. So personal information. I don't want to know how old you are. You shouldn't tell me if you're married. I don't want to know how many number of children you have. Pictures, although these may be required in some countries, they're not required in all. So please do not include them, particularly in the United States. It is not customary to include an image. Actually, in terms of hiring practices in the United States, it is illegal to discriminate according to race, ethnicity, gender. So if you include a photograph on your resume and you send it to an employer and they don't interview you, you could potentially sue them for saying, discrimination. This is at least my understanding of the process. So some hiring managers don't even look at resumes if they have a cover on it. They just kind of throw it away because they don't want to be considered for perhaps discriminating. Now, this is the thing. I'm of two minds on this though, because you could just easily go on LinkedIn and find a picture of me and see what I look like. So I know that I might be contradicting myself right now. I think that things are kind of in flux with this resume and the idea of pictures on resumes. I'd say for right now, just to be safe, don't include it on the resume. If they want to find you on LinkedIn and see what you look like, they can do that. But I'd say keep it off the resume. And definitely not social security number, okay? And an inappropriate email address, that would be like, hotchick45@gmail.com. That's probably inappropriate for applying for positions. You just use your standard. You could use Columbia email address. You could use a personal email address like francesca.finelli@gmail.com. That's totally great. Whatever you prefer to list, just only list one email address as well. I think that that's important. Don't list more than one because it can confuse employers. Just give them one and they know where to contact you. Okay, so objective statements, such as seeking a position in finance. Instead, use your cover letter or maybe a summary to kind of show what you're looking for. I really don't think, particularly at graduate level, objective statements are not necessary. Repetition of words. So in your bullet points, maybe you're saying responsible for hiring office supplies, responsible for training interns. Don't use the same word again and again. There's not many words on a resume. So try to use many different action verbs and don't bore the individual. Full sentences. So I'm saying I worked in an office and I ordered office supplies daily. I often did this work with the help of my manager. Don't need full sentences. Just keep it short and brief. And I would say don't include references. I say write references available upon request and prepare a separate document that lists your references. Unless a job description asks for references, I would not include them because then you have control over the process of giving your reference information, because often if someone's checking your references, you're very close to getting a job. And so you want to maybe notify your reference that maybe, okay, Columbia University is going to be calling you maybe in the next week because of this job that I've applied to and I've interviewed for, and they've asked for your reference. Here's the job description. Here's my most updated resume. So that individual knows that they're going to expect a call. And it's helpful for them to see your resume and to see the job description so they can really talk to the skills that the company is looking for. And finally, I had some fun with this. No typos, no spelling mistakes, no grammatical errors. This can just take you out of the running. And so I do really think that just make sure you have a second set of eyes. So, and I'll go over this in common resume mistakes. So I think the main thing is overselling yourself. Be truthful about your abilities and skill set. You know, don't put any false information. As I said, if you had 1 semester of high school Spanish, maybe you shouldn't put Spanish on your languages. I put Italian on my resume, and I haven't used it quite recently. And I was actually in a job interview where someone asked me to conjugate a verb, and I did it, luckily. But I was like, maybe I should put I'm basic next to my Italian skills or something. And I think I just might have taken it off at this point. So consider that. You know, keep that in mind. Only put the most important information first, okay? So, excuse me, not putting most important information first, right? So like, instead, as I said, there's a very set, clear way that you should organize a resume. The 2 areas that are interchangeable are your education and your experience. Sometimes people prefer to put experience first and then education on the bottom to really highlight that experience. And some people decide to put education first and then experience. But it should really be going, you know, there's a very set way that the resume should look. And I know you might want to just highlight, maybe you're part of a student group you're really excited about, but leadership usually isn't the first part of a resume, right? So make sure you're following that order. Don't include old or irrelevant experience. So maybe some of you have some experience waiting tables. I have a lot of experience being a waitress. I don't include that on my resume anymore because it's not really relevant to the job description. Really, it should be only the best and the most recent. Remember, this is just a snapshot of you and your experience. Okay, giving too much information. So overcrowding your resume with too much information, that's, you know, you want to leave enough white space and space so that it's easy to read very quickly. Don't use abbreviations or technical words because a recruiter and HR manager might not understand what that means. Make sure that you're considering different audiences when you are writing your descriptions. Okay, so pro tip, you got to tailor your resume every time, okay? And that will make your resume stand out. Don't just send the same resume and the same cover letter out to 100 places because they'll see that you haven't spent the time to really tailor it to their company and their description. And so we'll talk more about tailoring. Well, actually, I think my next slide. Yes, how do you tailor your resume? So this is so important. So the main thing is review the job description, highlight keywords and required skills. In a minute, I will go over this with you, but these are the, you know, the formats here. Reflect on your experiences. How can you prove to the reader that you have the required skills, okay? So after you've highlighted, think about this, and then put those keywords, especially if you see a specific word repeated again and again, make sure that you're using those words in your bullet point. Can you arrange your sections to better fit the description? And so, I mean, do you want to put education first and then your work experience, or maybe flip the 2? Those are the 2 that, I mean, arranging it in that manner. Then sit down and write, okay? And it is helpful to create a template resume. I had kind of like a CV, so a 2-page document that I have all my experience on. And then I kind of recreate a new resume every time I apply, depending on the type of position. So you might need to have a couple of different versions of your resume, depending on the type of job you're applying for. For example, I have a background in arts administration. When I was making the transition to work in higher ed, I was still sometimes applying to art administration positions. So my art admin resume looked very different than my higher ed administration resume. And I changed them by using specific keywords and skills, and I had different versions. So you might have to have a couple of different versions of your resume. And then have a parent or a friend or a mentor or a career advisor review your resume to check for errors and to get feedback. Like maybe you're using some technical skills and I'm like, I have no idea what that means. I'm sure other people might not either. So try to get another set of eyes on your resume. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about writing a strong cover letter. I'm sure none of you were writing your cover letters on a typewriter, but I thought it was a little fun icon. And so again, what does Julia say about this? She says, I love this. I like to call cover letters the gateway to getting an interview. It's your unique story. Tell your narrative through your experiences. Be genuine, honest, and stay away from cliches like team player. Instead, talk about situations where you proved to be all those things. And I think that that's the main thing about a cover letter is that it's a story, it's a narrative, and you want to be as specific as possible. Anyone can say, oh, I'm really good at communicating in the office. I have great communication skills. Anyone can say that. But you need to list specific examples of when you use those communication skills, and it proves to the employer that you actually have those skills. Now, cover letter writing, this makes it sound a little more exciting than maybe it is because it's your unique experience. It's pretty formulaic, and I'll show you the formula in a minute. It doesn't mean you can't have fun, but you know, I do think cover letter writing is a great way to reflect on your narrative. And narrative and specific stories is a very crucial interview skill. So this is a great way to kind of practice those skills. All right, so let's talk about, before you start writing, as I said before, research the employer. This is very similar to your tailoring your resume, right? So learn about the organization. See if you're a strong fit for the company. Review their website. Speak with current or previous employees and read articles. Use social media sites like LinkedIn to Twitter, or maybe Instagram, to read about their newest stories in the company. So really, it's so important that you know the employer before you start writing. If you can, find a specific contact. We talked about LinkedIn previously, right? And I showed you kind of skills and tools to search the platform to find individuals. Sometimes it's even just listed on the company's website. And sometimes they even list the individual's email address. And you can write directly to them. So analyze the description, as I said, make a list of keywords, including repeated words, and then add them to your cover letter. And then analyze your background. You know, what have you done? What is similar to this work? And that can be, honestly, also even classes or projects. It doesn't only have to be work experience. Your education is also a very valid and important experience that you can draw upon in your resume. So it doesn't only have to focus, and also volunteer, okay? So this is the format. As I said, it's a little cut and dry. I'm just gonna take a sip here. Okay, so your introduction, the position, so it should list in the first paragraph, the position you're applying to, where you found the job, the name of the company or contact in the connection or the connection that you have right at the top. A short summary, perhaps of you, who you are, what's your education, how many years of experience do you have? And if you don't have many years of experience, don't include that part, okay? Because it is important. Oh, you know what? I had a quick poll. Yeah, let's take a quick break. I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but I do want to take this poll because I think, you know, I just want to know, do you think cover letters are important? Okay. Let's see if people are there. Is everyone still paying attention? As I can't see your squares. All right. So, oh, good. This is great. I don't have to convince you. Most of you have already said, yes, they're important. I get this question because, you know, people are like, I've heard hiring managers, they don't read cover letters. You know, they don't spend the time to do it. And I think you don't know who's reading your application materials. Some people might not spend the time reading it, but then there are other individuals who for me, the cover letter shows that you know how to write, you know how to communicate, and you know how to effectively convey ideas. So I think it's really important. And, you know, you don't know who's going to be reading it. Maybe some people won't, but at least if they are reading it, it's going to be strong, right? Okay, so then you express your interest in working for the company by demonstrating that you've done your research right in the introduction. And then you end with a statement of confidence, which is like, I know I'll be a great addition to your company. And some people think that that's bragging or being too forward, but in America, particularly in American job market, it's kind of important to have that confidence. Okay, the body of the paragraph. Highlight your experiences and your skills that are relevant to the position or the organization. And as I said, cite specific examples, okay? So I try to organize my cover letter around specific experiences. So I'll have a paragraph about maybe my most recent job, and then a paragraph about my education and how what I'm doing in my education relates to the position itself. So I try to organize my paragraph, my body paragraphs around experiences themselves. And then communicate how you would be valuable to the employer. So like, I have all of these skills and I know I can make your company better with my skills. You always try to bring it back to them at the end, because it's about them, it's about you, but it's also about how you're going to fit into their culture. And then highlight your soft skills. I think this is so important because often soft skills don't make it to the resume. And you want to talk about how you've proven to be great with communication, leadership, able to take direction from a manager, and have time management. So I'm conscious of the time here, so I'm going to quickly move through our conclusion because I want to show you some examples. So you want to thank the reader for their time and consideration, reaffirm your interest in the position, reemphasize why you want to work for them. So you kind of bookend it with why you want to work there and end it with why you want to work there, and then offer contact information. And then be confident. I know I'll make a great addition to your office, right? So let's look at some samples. So I'm going to just end the slideshow really quickly. And I'm still sharing. Oops, I don't know why. Let me share again here. Okay. And we're going to look at these samples. So I hope, is everyone seeing this okay? Rachel, is it big enough, or should I kind of zoom in here a little bit? Okay, I can't hear you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Say if it's possible to zoom in a little bit, but I think people can probably kind of figure it out on, I think, no, you know what? It's okay. I think
it's
people
better
should be able
now?
to see it.
Okay, great. Yep. All right, so here, we're looking at a job ad here. Now, this is from Imagine PhD, and this is a really helpful online resource that Rachel's going to drop into the box, the chat box. And please check this out, because they list the job ad, then they list, they give you a sample resume for the job ad, and then a cover letter, okay? So this is really helpful. So we're going to look here. This is at the writing, publishing, and editing. So this is a specific job. You know, you can go into job families and say, you know, there's advocacy, there's a statistical analysis. They have all these different job families. And if you go into those job families on the website, you can find sample materials from each of these industries. So we're going to talk about one from writing and publishing. And so this is for Fox Careers, and you're looking at the job here, and it talks about fostering talent. So it says it's for a position of associate editor for National Geographic Traveler. So they are looking for someone to kind of look over the magazine's entire front of book section. They're fostering emerging talent, and they want you to collaborate heavily with the photo and department designs. So this is what I'm talking about, highlighting these key skills in the job description. So, and it tells you, they give you some pointers here too. So you could kind of just go over this yourself on the site, but you're highlighting, right? Really highlighting the source and cultivating. So they've said this now twice, that they want to cultivate for front of book sections, you know, write any pages not assigned for a freelance writer. Okay, so they need to assist editors with smaller features. So it's kind of giving you an overview of the responsibilities that they're looking for. And then they give you the qualifications. And so they say, you know, at least 3 years of relevant work experience, a bachelor's degree at least, with graduate work, perhaps in journalism or communications preferred. You need to have a knowledge of media landscape and travel experience, and experience with editorial layout software, and reporting skills, right? So you can kind of read this as well. And then they give you the division description. So telling you a little bit about the office and, you know, what they're looking for. So they say, you know, it's committed to bringing to the world premium science, adventure, and exploration content across unrivaled portfolio of media assets. And then it gives you some more information about, you know, kind of it. But, you know, I think that this is really nice. You can see what information has been highlighted and what this individual has kind of taken away from the job description. And now we want to see how they translate into the resume. So they talk about, so they have a profile here, right? So here's the contact information, and they start right with a profile. And it's one page, as you can see. There's a lot of white space. It's easy to read. And, you know, I'm not overwhelmed with the information here. And so the profile says adventure and discovering loving editor. So this is perfect for National Geographic, right? You're an adventurer. You like discovering things. You have an expertise in travel media and seeking like-minded colleagues. So you're going to fit in with the office, right? That sounds great. And then you have relevant work experience. I think this is so important. So maybe she has a lot more work experience, but she's only talking about the relevant work experience here. And just the word relevant kind of cues to me that she probably has more experience, but she's just not listing it here because it doesn't make sense or it doesn't relate to the job. So I know, oh, she's taken a lot of time to kind of review the job description and only include relevant experience here. So she gives me the university. She tells me the position that she held and where and the dates. And then she says, review submissions, communicate with selected editors and provide edits on their piece. So kind of going back, they required in the job description that you are able to provide edits, right? So she's showing that she has that that experience. She says she has selected photographs and artwork to enhance the author's work. That was something that they saw that's what they required in the job description. She's proving it right there. They maintain a database and WordPress website. So those are some skills that they were looking for. And then again, University of Arizona, right? And teaching assistant. So telling me the next position. And again, it's in reverse chronological order, most recent to least recent, although she put to present here. Well, you know, I think what she's doing though is putting University of Arizona twice here, which makes sense. I would personally actually make a change to this and get rid of this second one and kind of just put both of these underneath the same header. And then that way, it kind of makes sense with the organization. So that's why it is important always to get a second opinion on these, because, you know, I think that you can always benefit from insight from someone else, particularly a career advisor. And then she has here Zion National Park, where she was a travel media manager and adventure expedition guide. She led guided adventure expedition for visitors. She managed content. She was a blogger and vlogger. And then she even gives me a link here, which is really nice. So I could kind of click through and see the examples. Now I have skills and styles, so what she's good at. And what I like here is that she also kind of puts skills. I like that, skills in mountain biking and rock climbing. I used to tell students, you know, maybe you should take out your personal interest. But then I had a student who said, I went into an interview, and I had rock climbing in my interest. And the interviewer who I was speaking to loved rock climbing too. And we spent most of the interview talking about rock climbing. And that usually means like, that's probably a good sign. So try to connect with other people in any other way you can. And then this individual decides to put education really at the end here because she wants to highlight her skills and her experience more so than the education. So she's decided to kind of put that down on the bottom. Now, I have another example that I wanted to share with you today, but I didn't really have the time. But here again, you know, I just want to show you, again, this is from Imagine PhD. This is from Research and Analysis Job Family, they call it. And so here's the job description, right? They give you a sample job description. They show how they're highlighting it, kind of the required skills that they're looking for. And then it shows you someone who's created a resume in response to this job description, as well as a cover letter, and how they've kind of responded to those positions. And so again, you know, kind of, I just want to show here that saying, you know, my research focus on policy knowledge make me a strong match for the position. That's a statement of confidence right there that I was talking about. Then my PhD analyzed the contemporary history of U.S. immigration policy through oral interviews, surveys, literature review, data analysis, and archival research, and analyzed how changing official policies and media representations shared public attitudes towards immigration. So he's being so specific in the description here. I know he's done oral interviews, surveys, you know, official policies, and then he's talking about how these elements that he worked on, Eve, I think it was perhaps a woman, just we can say they, them, they, you know, use these materials to have kind of sway public attitude towards immigration. So they're focusing on the results here, right? Remember that star? So I think that, it's really nice that these examples, again, all of these are online, they are free. Please check them out. And spend some time, reviewing them, because I think it's really helpful to show how to very clearly tailor your materials for a specific description. All right, let's go back to my presentation here. All right, so finally, how to follow up on your applications, okay? Keep a spreadsheet to track your progress. I think that this is really helpful, instead of just I know some people who actually just put a tag on all of the resumes they send out for jobs. And then at least it's in one folder in your inbox. I think it is still really helpful though to have a spreadsheet, because you could list where you've applied, the date you applied, and then you can also have columns for when you followed up, because follow-up is really important. If you apply directly to an email address, I'd say follow up at least 3 times, and in between, so you'd send the initial email, then you'd wait 10 business days or 2 weeks to follow up on that email and say, hello, I'm writing to check on the status of my application. I want to reiterate my interest in the position. I think I'm a good fit for the position because of X, Y, Z. And so a very short email. And then, to show that you're still interested in the position. If you still do not receive a response from that second follow-up, you can send an additional third and final follow-up email. I think following up shows that you have a strong interest in the position, and not everyone does it. And an employer wants to hire someone who wants to work at their company. So show that you're really interested. However, if you just apply to a job portal, it's a lot harder to do this. So I kind of just let it go and really try to be patient, because reviewing applications takes time, and it takes often employers many months to maybe even get through applications. So I think the main thing here is that expect this process to be challenging. We have a career development office for a reason. It's really hard to look for a job. It's really frustrating. And expect that you're going to send out many applications and often receive silence from an employer. Sometimes only contact you if you want an interview. And I know that seems really rude, and it's very frustrating to not receive responses, but I want to tell you right now, it's normal and it's part of the process. So be prepared for that. And then don't give up. Applying for jobs takes a lot of tenacity. It takes you trying again and again and again. And as I said, I really hope that through this presentation, you have an understanding that if you take the time though, and really change your resume and change your cover letter every time in small ways to fit the job description, that's what's going to make your application material stand out. So I really hope that you do spend the time though to change those materials. Don't just send them everywhere, okay? But don't give up. Our office is here to support you in that process. Okay, so I'm going to end this here and ask for questions. I know we have a couple of minutes, so I hope, Rachel, do we have any questions right off the bat?
Yeah, we do. Thanks, Francesca. A few people have written in questions, and I will go through them. So there are a couple of different questions about, we'll start with a resume question,
Okay.
and a couple questions about functional resumes.
Okay.
So one person says, I made a career change. So I've had a couple of internships recently, but have had management experience before, so before graduate school.
Yeah.
And so in a traditional reverse chronological order resume, that can kind of get lost.
Yeah.
And then there's a similar question about, I graduated from undergrad about 10 years ago, but the experience before going to graduate school isn't particularly relevant. So kind of how do I organize it? And I think I'm a big fan of the functional resume,
Yes.
and tailored to particular positions. So this person gives examples of they've used on their resume in the past, like a program management section or a
Yes.
program leadership section.
Exactly.
I think those are very useful, and you can really tailor this. And I've done this with my own resume, and what Francesca was talking about before with changing from arts administration to higher education. How do you do that? And how do you signal that you have relevant experience? And one great way is to take take the position descriptions and you can create any buckets you want for a functional resume. So a functional resume is basically like, rather than just one experience section that starts from now and works backwards, it's different buckets on your resume, usually like no more than 2 to 3. But bucketing your experience to make it relevant for what you're applying to. The key is that within those buckets, that should be in reverse chronological order, because that's how people are used to seeing it. But I think they're a great tool, and it also helps to address the question that the other person had about, you know, what do I do about older irrelevant experience? Like what do I include? What do I not include? What about, like, will people see a huge gap if I'm, you know, missing 5 years of my life on a resume? But I think Francesca I think you answered this with talking about, you know, you can just use the word relevant experience, and then that automatically signals to people that you're not, you know, a resume is supposed to be, is not supposed to be exhaustive. Nobody's, you know, everybody, employers know that when they're looking at a resume. So if you use that word relevant, that helps to signal that. So Francesca, do you have other thoughts on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's all about section headings. Like when I was working at students at the Graduate School of Architecture, like I would say, you know, you could have architectural experience, and then you could have a teaching experience. So you could even have 2 separate sections in terms of highlighting your education. So I think the headers are really important, and then it allows you to maybe, you know, kind of, let's say there's something really important on there that you wanted to highlight, and maybe it's not, you know, as in chronological order, but you can start with that, you know. So it's a way of kind of working with that process. So I think you hit the main points there, Rachel.
Great. We just had another resume question come in, and then there's also a cover letter question.
Okay.
But this one is that recently I filled out a personal details form for a job and did not mention a very relevant volunteer experience from 2 years ago. And basically, should relevant volunteer experience, well, the question is, should we mention it in an interview or in a follow-up if we didn't mention it originally? And I'd say absolutely. And moving forward, I would include, you know, resumes. And on the one hand, there's a very particular formula, but on the other hand, like, you can make a lot of editorial decisions about where you put things in your resume. And you don't need to have like a volunteer section where you put all of your volunteer work. Like, there are situations where you can put very relevant volunteer work in your experience section. It doesn't all have to be paid experience. So you can definitely take liberties there. So I think, like, it's really important to think about all, you know, holistically about all of your experience that's relevant for a particular position, and that should find its way onto your resume, onto your tailored resume for that position.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, you know, this is the thing, like, I'm giving you some guidelines, but you don't have to, you need to do what makes the most sense for you. And you could have a section for volunteer, or you could put it within the work experience. So there is flexibility within this. So I hope that you're not walking away from this presentation being like, I have to do it exactly this way. There is some flexibility. Yeah.
Great. So now we have a great cover letter question. And this question is, a lot of the roles I've been applying for don't allow a cover letter with the application. Do you have any tips for how to make a resume stand out from the pile when you don't have the opportunity to really sell yourself in a cover letter?
Okay.
Francesca, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, I would, I think that you create a tailored resume then. Unfortunately, you don't get to string together all your thoughts and maybe nice little sentences. But perhaps instead of using a cover letter, you have a summary then up at the top, and you use a short description of you and your experience and your skills, and you have an opportunity to kind of make a mini cover letter, perhaps in a summary at the top. Making it stand out, I'd say it sounds like that company is probably running all these resumes through a kind of automated system where they're looking for keywords. And if they find those keywords in a resume, they'll put them in one pile, and then that pile gets actually reviewed. And so make sure that if there are repeated words when you're going through a job description, that you are making sure that not even those repeated words, but just maybe specific bullet points in any of the responsibilities or the required skills, things like that. Make sure that you repeat those phrases in your resume, because they're probably just running it through an AI system.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And a couple of other tips. I'm guessing you didn't say what the means was for submitting your applications, and I'm guessing it's just through some kind of portal where you don't have the ability to include any other message. But
yeah.
If you're ever emailing an application, you can always, even if you don't, first of all, if the process for a job is, there's actually a question that wasn't asked, but it's often asked, is should I put my cover letter in an attachment, or should I put it in the body of the email?
Yeah, great point.
You should put it in the as an attachment. Is the answer, with a short like cover, like your email should just be a very brief email saying like, I'm applying for this position. Please find attached my resume and cover letter. Thank you for consideration. So your cover letter should go in an email attachment. But if they only ask for a resume and you're emailing it, then you can include a longer email that can kind of stand in for a cover letter. And something else you can do, which goes back to some of the networking advice we've given, is if you can, if you're just applying to a company through a portal and don't have the ability to upload a cover letter, you can find a way to to message an HR person on LinkedIn, or through the networking that you've done in the past. Hopefully, hopefully you have like another means of contact with that company. And hope, that's another reason to do informational interviews and network on LinkedIn, so that when you're in these situations where you don't have the opportunity to sell yourself further other than just a one-page resume, that you have some other point of contact with that company as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, and I didn't include it in my presentation because I think, it is important though, if you're just sending through an automated, try other ways of finding, because you don't have a specific email to follow up with.
Great. Well, I think we're out of time, and that we pretty much covered the questions that have been submitted. So I just dropped in the chat another link to the advising page on our website, because as Francesca mentioned at the beginning, we're now open for one-on-one advising appointments. So you can feel free to go to that site if you want a more detailed look at your job search materials or any other questions that you have. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much.